My estranged in-laws blame me for my wife's sudden death, threaten legal action to take my kids and our family home amidst my grief. Last month I lost my wife. I still cannot believe it as I am writing this, because I still feel like she is here with me every day. And I'm still hoping that I might wake up tomorrow and realize it has all been a very bad dream. I received a call, but it wasn't the usual kind. It was an unexpected video call from my 7-year-old. It happened in the middle of the afternoon on a Wednesday while I was still at work. I noticed the incoming call from his iPad, and when I answered, I found him on the other end looking grim. I asked him, "What's wrong, buddy?" And he replied that something was wrong with Mommy. I asked him to give the phone to my wife, and he walked toward the living room, turning the camera to face my wife. To my horror, I saw my wife half slumped on the sofa with her head sideways. I called out her name, and my son started to shake her, but she slumped over even more. My oldest son tried to hold her head up and told me that something was wrong and that she was too cold. Clearly, she wasn't responding, and her complexion looked very pale. Without a second thought, I shouted her name and hastily made my way out of the office, ready to rush home. Our plan with my boys was always to head to a neighbor's in an emergency, so I quickly told them to run next door, assuring them I would call right back. Dialing, I shared our location and explained the situation. My workplace was about 25 minutes away from home. The drive felt like an eternity, yet strangely, it also felt like mere seconds, if that makes any sense. I called the boys back, and they answered while knocking on the neighbor's door. Fortunately, my neighbors answered, and my sons explained the situation to them. Immediately, they all hurried over to our place to help my wife. I remained on the call, and my son informed me a few minutes later that the police had arrived. With about 15 more minutes of driving, I pulled in and spotted my sons talking to a few officers in the yard while my neighbors stood there looking distressed. There were 2 ambulances and what felt like a fleet of police cars. I hurried over, and my neighbors walked toward me, trying to explain the situation and how they were too late. I approached the scene slowly and asked the first paramedic if everything was okay. He apologized, explaining that my wife was too far gone and that there was nothing they could do. Seeing her lifeless body, I felt like my world went numb. I was too shocked to speak. I sat down next to her, cradling her head, refusing to accept that she had gone. I don't remember what was happening around me, but all I know is that I felt pain in degrees that I can't even write about. The worst part was that my poor little boys had found her. Something had happened to her suddenly, and we wouldn't know anything until toxicology was complete. The paramedics assured me that, from the scene, it didn't seem like there was any foul play and asked me questions about my wife's health. I told them how my wife had been facing severe headaches recently, but we chalked it up to migraines. They assured me that we would be getting an answer soon after their tests and took my wife's body away. My boys came and told me how they found her on the sofa, thinking she was just sleeping. They went out to play and returned later, but she hadn't moved, and they couldn't wake her up. It broke my heart that they had to walk around her for an hour or more. That part bothered me the most. The kids were stronger than me. I was a mess trying to say the right things. I hugged them, and we all cried together. It all seemed like a very bad nightmare, and I didn't know how to survive without my wife. Later, I had to pull myself together since I knew that I needed to call my in-laws and tell them about what had happened to their daughter. It made me a bit nervous since my wife and her parents had been estranged for a long time. To give some context, my wife and I had very different upbringings. I came to this country when I was 6, and we faced a lot of struggles. My parents worked really hard to support me and my siblings, always putting our education first. My dad often shared his dream of owning a house, but we couldn't save enough as we were renting in pricey areas with good schools. Sadly, both my parents passed away before realizing that dream. My dad left us when I was 17, and my mom lost her battle with cancer almost 3 years ago. My wife grew up fairly wealthy, private schools, designer clothes, and 3 to 4 international vacations per year, flying first or business class the whole way. I was able to attend college thanks to student loans, scholarships, and part-time jobs, which delayed my graduation a bit, while her parents were able to fairly easily cover all expenses themselves. However, I'm the last person to say that my wife hasn't earned everything she's gotten. She was an extremely intelligent person, and besides funding her education, her parents were in no way responsible for her accomplishments. My wife and I crossed paths 6 years ago when we both landed jobs at the same company. We started in the same position simultaneously, right after graduating from college. Almost instantly, we hit it off, and it didn't take long for us to begin dating. Although we both still worked for the same company, I climbed the career ladder a bit more rapidly than she had, and made over twice what she earned. The situation allowed me to tackle my student loans aggressively. Once those were paid off, I redirected that effort into saving for a down payment on a house, an endeavor driven by a desire to fulfill my parents' dreams. When I knew that I was financially comfortable enough to start a family, I decided to propose to her. She was overjoyed and said yes. The next weekend after I had proposed to her, we decided to meet with her parents to share the happy news with them. They were happy as well and announced out of nowhere that for a wedding present, they were going to give us a house. My wife was so excited, and although I was also happy, I wanted to know the details as well, pretty quickly. Her parents then told us that the house would be in her name only, and that they expected us to sign a prenup to protect any and only pre-marriage assets, just in case I was marrying her for money. I felt insulted by the implication that I was after their money, especially considering I earned more than my wife. Our financial approach had always been shared. She made around $100,000 a year, and I made around $240,000. We split expenses according to our incomes, with me covering about 2/3 and her contributing about 1/3. This arrangement was set to continue after marriage. Moreover, if she got pregnant, I was ready to take on the entire financial responsibility to ensure no burden fell on her. I shared this plan with my in-laws, but they felt like I was not good enough for their daughter. This really hurt me, but it didn't entirely surprise me because the truth is, my in-laws have never liked me from the moment they met me. I have no idea what I did to make them dislike me so much. I'd always been polite to them, so I didn't know what their problem was with me. For example, they didn't really seem to have any interest in talking to me, and I was even once given a backhanded comment by her mother that I wasn't good looking enough for her daughter. Maybe that may have been true, but I loved my wife and compensated by being a responsible and loving partner to her, always. I always tried my best when I was around my mother-in-law and father-in-law to get to know them as best as I could, but sadly, they never saw my efforts. My wife had noticed this as well and had tried to talk to them several times over the years, but they never changed. I even know that once my in-laws tried to talk my wife out of being with me and told her to keep looking for a better partner than me. Fortunately, my wife never cared about their opinion. Coming back to the prenup issues, my wife was offended as well, and she protested against this unequal treatment. However, her parents remained firm. The argument escalated when they started pointing out my humble beginnings, suggesting she should be cautious about our relationship. This deeply offended both of us. Despite my wife's efforts to stand up for us, her parents continued to demean me and insisted on their conditions. As the argument intensified in frustration, my wife declared that she didn't want any gifts from her parents. Furthermore, she announced that we would save and purchase our own house together. I nodded in agreement, supporting her decision. This declaration offended my in-laws, and their tone shifted to blame. They pointed fingers at me for refusing to sign the prenup, claiming that my stance was creating discord between them and their daughter. The atmosphere became increasingly hostile, with their accusations ringing in the air. Despite attempts to calm the situation, my in-laws continued to berate me, raising their voices and refusing to listen. Faced with their unyielding stance and the escalating tension, we had no choice but to make a difficult decision. We walked out, leaving them behind as they continued shouting at us. Since then, we haven't been in contact with them. The tension and disagreement led my wife to implement a complete no-contact policy with them. Despite the family ties, the emotional strain and differences proved too challenging to bridge. Years passed since we ever talked with them. Over the years, we did buy a house together and went on to have 2 handsome sons. Now that my wife had passed away, I needed to contact my in-laws and give them the devastating news. When I told my mother-in-law, she couldn't believe it at first, and then she started to blame me. She was yelling that it was my fault, that I killed her daughter, and that she was going to make me pay for it. I never thought that she would support or comfort me at these trying times, but I also wasn't expecting her to react this way. I also had tried to inform my father-in-law, but he didn't pick up my call, so I hoped he would hear the news from my mother-in-law. The next day, they showed up at my doorstep unexpectedly. They started yelling at me in front of my sons that I had killed their daughter and that they were never going to forgive me for it. My son, who had never met their grandparents, looked at them wide-eyed in shock. I tried to calm them down, but my father-in-law yelled that I didn't deserve to marry his daughter and that I should have just left her alone. My mother-in-law, on her part, kept wailing and shouting at me. They never once bothered to notice the frightened expressions on my dear boys, who looked devastated seeing my wife's parents blame me for her death. At this point, I had no other choice but to call the police on them. When the police arrived, my mother-in-law and father-in-law rushed to accuse me of murdering my wife. The police officers looked at me quizzically, and I calmly explained to them how my sons had found her body and how we had contacted immediately. The officers questioned my sons for a bit, and they answered them honestly. After that, the officers tried to explain to my in-laws that there was nothing that they could do at this point and that they needed to wait for the toxicology or autopsy result. The officers asked me if I wanted to press any charges on my in-laws, but I refused. I requested them to just take them out so me and my boys could grieve in peace. Later, a doctor contacted me and told me that the first results of the autopsy of my wife revealed the cause of death to be a brain clot. which was an unexpected blood clot that had blocked her brain. The doctor basically told me that my wife had no chance to survive. I could have done absolutely nothing. After I got a copy of the results, I called my in-laws again just to inform them about the results. They listened to the results and seemed a bit calmer, so I thought that they would be okay with me after that. The next thing we clashed on was the funeral. My wife and I never really talked about death because we didn't think so long-term about it. However, I remembered that once, when we attended the funeral of someone last year, my wife said how she would like an outdoor funeral with nature rather than an indoor one, as it seemed too formal and sad. Following my wife's preference for nature, I suggested a simple outdoor ceremony in our backyard with the flowers and trees that she had spent years growing. The goal was to make it peaceful and thoughtful, aligning with her love for the outdoors. But my in-laws strongly disagreed. They wanted a regular funeral at the local church, highlighting the significance of their religious customs and the comfort they felt in that setting. I refused, telling them how my wife had wished for this, and it was important for us to honor her wishes. She was not that religious, hence I didn't want to listen to my in-laws' demands. This infuriated them. My mother-in-law told me that I had no right to do this to her daughter, and that I needed to stop meddling in her funeral. My father-in-law also started to accuse me of how I clearly never loved my wife, and that I probably killed her for her life insurance because of our mounting pressures in marriage. I scoffed and informed them that we were quite happy in our lives with our 2 boys, so we had absolutely no tension. I assured them that whatever happened to her was indeed completely unexpected, but it had nothing to do with any household or marriage stress whatsoever. I stuck to my idea and insisted on an outdoor ceremony despite their arguments, as if these arguments weren't enough. My in-laws continued to fight with me over the days for unnecessary things when I was organizing the funeral music, the guest list, and the coffin. They didn't want certain people to attend since they didn't talk to them anymore, but I shut them down. I told them that it was a funeral for my wife, and that she would have wanted these people to be there. Everyone who wanted to say goodbye to her for the last time was welcome, and I wasn't going to ban anyone from attending. I could see the resentment on their faces, but there was nothing that they could do. The day finally arrived when it was the service for my wife, the beautiful mother of my boys. Part of me wanted to get it over with, but another part wondered if I could handle it. The boys gave me strength. A lot of people turned up, and it was incredible to see how much she was loved. Some of my close friends and family, seeing the state I was in, offered to clean up around the house or help me in any way that they could. It was powerful to see that with my own eyes, yet I felt so helpless and guilty. When my friends cleaned up my house, the most random words or things I saw made me cry uncontrollably. I had to ask my friends multiple times during the funeral if it was all a dream, literally questioning my sanity, only to realize I felt the heartbreak in my chest. After the funeral, I just lay on our bed where the boys had slept each night since. I was surrounded by my wife's clothes, jewelry, and a phone that continued to vibrate with spam messages and emails. I couldn't help but break down crying. A few days later, we had to go and meet with a lawyer to discuss my wife's will. As the lawyer read through the document, it became clear that my wife had left what she had to me. My mother-in-law and father-in-law, listening to this, completely lost their minds. They started to accuse me of killing my wife for the money, labeling me a gold digger. I couldn't believe their words. Their reaction was not only hurtful, but also completely unfounded. The pain of losing my wife was already overwhelming, and their baseless accusations only added to the heartache. They somehow believed that their daughter would have lived if she hadn't married me, that she died because of the life with me. I understood that they were hurt and that they had lost their daughter. So despite all the tension, I tried to hold my tongue as much as I could, understanding their grief was clouding their judgment. But I didn't deserve this attitude. I loved her too. I told them firmly that it wasn't fair for them to blame me for my wife's death continuously, and that I was financially capable enough also. So my wife didn't have to leave anything for me. But she did because she loved me and the boys. So if they had a problem with it, they were welcome to form their own judgment. But I wasn't going to sit here and listen to them take out their anger on me. I made it very clear to them that they were welcome to contact me once they had calmed down and understood how ridiculous and baseless their accusations were. My in-laws then began questioning me about the house. I met their inquiries with a blank stare as they pressed on, asking who the house would go to. I straightforwardly explained that the house was purchased using both my wife's and my money, so naturally, it would remain in my possession. As my in-laws persisted, arguing that there was no way I could afford the house and insisting that I would sign it over to them, I firmly refused their absurd demand. The tension escalated when they started to threaten me. They warned me that if I didn't comply and sign the house away, they would take away my kids from me. In response to their threatening ultimatum, I looked them in the eyes and firmly declared, "This is ridiculous. I am not going to sign away our house, which me and my wife paid for. You can't just threaten to take away my kids from me. I am their father, and they will stay with me." My voice carried a mix of defiance and determination as I asserted my commitment to protecting my family and our family house no matter what. Their faces tightened with anger, and frustration flashed in their eyes. The refusal to comply with their demands seemed to further ignite their fury. They exchanged heated glares and retorted sharply, unwilling to back down from their position. In an attempt to defuse the situation and protect my own well-being, I calmly stated, "I won't continue this conversation under these circumstances. We need some time apart to cool off, and you both need to think about what you are asking of me. I am not giving you my house, no matter what you do." Without waiting for a response, I chose to leave the tense environment, hoping that a break would pave the way for more rational discussions in the future. Unfortunately, just a week ago, I received a letter from my late wife's estranged parents demanding that I sign over the house to them or face legal action. They claimed that as the rightful grandparents, they should be the ones to raise my children in the home their daughter loved. I am shocked and heartbroken. I never imagined that my grief would be compounded by a legal battle for my own children. I have consulted with a lawyer, and they've assured me that legally, the in-laws have no grounds to demand the house. However, the emotional toll of this threat is draining me. I'm not sure how to navigate this situation. My wife and I worked hard to build a life together, and I want to provide the best possible environment for our kids. I'm willing to share custody if the situation worsens, but the idea of losing our family home is unbearable since my boys grew up here all their lives, and we don't have anywhere else to go. Have any of you been through something similar? How did you handle it? Was I in a hole to my in-laws in any way for them to take such an extreme step? I'm desperate for advice, support, or even just some honest opinions to get through this difficult time. Update 1. Hey Reddit, I appreciate all the support and advice that poured in after my initial post. It's been a rough journey since my wife's passing, and the situation with my in-laws has only escalated. Just wanted to give you all a quick update. After receiving their threatening letter, I decided to follow my lawyer's advice and not engage in direct communication with my in-laws. Instead, I focused on providing a stable and loving environment for my kids during this challenging time. They've been my priority, and I'm trying to focus on spending time with them. In the meantime, my lawyer prepared a response to their legal threats, outlining the reasons why their demands had no legal basis. The letter was sent, and now we're waiting for their reply. It's a stressful period, but I'm trying my best to stay strong for my boys. Update 2. Hello again, Reddit. It's been 4 months since my last update, and I wanted to share a significant development in the ongoing saga with my in-laws. I couldn't update you before these legal proceedings concluded, and I'm relieved to provide you with some positive news. Finally, after our lawyers exchanged letters and attempted negotiations, it became clear that my in-laws were determined to pursue legal action. Consequently, we found ourselves in court, where our respective legal teams presented arguments regarding the custody of my children and the ownership of the house. The legal battle was intense, emotions running high as both sides made their case. My lawyer had meticulously prepared our defense, presenting evidence of the joint ownership of the house and highlighting the stable environment I provided for my children. I had proof showing how I and my wife bought this house without any financial help from the in-laws whatsoever. We also emphasized the lack of legal grounds for my in-laws' claims and how they had never been involved in our sons' lives. On the other hand, my in-laws' legal team relied on emotional appeals rather than concrete evidence. The judge, seemingly unswayed by their emotional arguments, requested clear documentation to support their claims. As the proceedings unfolded, it became evident that their legal standing was weak, and my lawyer seized the opportunity to expose the inconsistencies in their case. The judge attentively listened to both sides, and when it was time to render a decision, to my immense relief, the judge ruled in my favor. He acknowledged the joint ownership of the house, hence, he declared that the house belonged to me and reprimanded my in-laws for trying to take my sons away from me at such a vulnerable time when the children had already lost one parent. The lack of a legal basis for my in-laws made them lose their case, as was already expected. Although I am happy that one major tension of my life is over, it still hasn't made me forget how to live my life without my dear wife. I grieve for her every day, and I miss her immensely. Every night when I put my sons to bed, I can feel how much they miss their mom. They ask about her, wonder why she had to go, and say how much they wish she was still here. It's really sad to see them wanting her, and I struggle to find the right words to help them feel better. In the middle of all these feelings, my close friends have been there for us. They see how tough things are for us, and they do whatever they can to help. They help with practical stuff and understand how my sons are feeling. Having them around makes things feel a bit more normal and comforting during these hard times. Thank you all for your words of encouragement and advice. As I continue to rebuild and move forward, I'll keep you updated on any further developments. The legal battle may be over, but the journey toward healing is ongoing. Update 3. My life with my boys has become more settled. We've established new routines, and I've made it a priority to provide them with a nurturing and loving home. From school activities to weekend adventures, we're navigating life's challenges together. One of the most significant reliefs is that my in-laws haven't troubled us since the legal battle concluded. It seems that the resolution in court has brought a sense of finality to the situation. I've also blocked them everywhere, so there's no way for them to contact me. And if they do ever show up on my doorstep, I will be ready to call the police in case things go awry. The boys are adjusting as best they can, and we've sought professional support to help them process their grief. It's a journey, but I'm committed to ensuring they grow up in a positive and supportive environment. As for me, the healing process continues. While the void left by my wife's absence remains, I'm learning to navigate this new chapter with resilience and hope. Thank you all for being a part of this journey.